I believe you need to be very clear on the destination that you want for your life, for your family. It's to be able to have personal freedom, to be able to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, and where I want. And an accredited investor has access to special, unique types of direct investments, making sure that you have the vehicle that's going to help you get to your ultimate short, mid, or long-term goal as quickly as possible.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence. And today I have Billy Keels. Billy is a long distance investor. He currently resides in Barcelona, Spain, but yet he has found a ways to investing long distance through thousands of miles into US over here. Currently, he's investing oil and gas related investments and also real estate, etc. So his passion is to help people reaching financial independence through tax efficiency, investing into various different assets, and teaching them how to also do this lifestyle thing that is living 10,000 miles away and investing not in your backyard. Welcome to our show today, Billy.
Elisa, thanks so much. It's great to see you again, and I'm really excited to be having this conversation. And I love the things that you're doing. So this is very cool. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy. We're gonna ask Billy about how do you actually investing, never mind across state, but across countries. And then B is how do you become tax efficient for your W-2 listeners over here? What are some of the vehicles that can create tax efficiencies while you're investing? And also, let's learn about a little more about oil and gas investing or related oil gas related investments, and then other passive investment with Billy. You used to work in the high tech industry,
Yep.
and how did you become who you are today?
Yeah, so this is one of these things where we have a lot in common in that regards. But if you don't mind, Elisa, just really quickly, if I could ask of your audience, I know I'm just here for the first time, but as a fellow podcaster, I know that you do an amazing job of having guests and being able to add value. And if you have not had a chance yet, just to leave an honest written review as well as a rating for Elisa, I think that would be really awesome. It's going to also help her to attract more guests for you so that you can move forward even faster. So with that kind of as the starter, yes, I'm a guy originally from Columbus, Ohio, but to your point, I have lived in Barcelona, Spain for the last 15 years, but I've been living in Europe for the last 21 years. I never planned on being here, never ever planned on being here. Being from the Midwest of the United States, I think even going to California was kind of like a really long trip for me. So, but the thing that happened is early on, when I was born, my parents, we moved to like 3 different states by the time I was 12. My brother and I was born in Ohio. My brother and sister were born in Colorado. At the same time, we ended up in Texas. My parents, neither one of the two of them have a college degree, so they really put a value on education. Both of them worked 2 jobs. Most of the jobs were, very blue collar jobs. I watched them struggle with finances. A lot of times towards the end of the month, it was, do we pay this bill or do we pay another bill? But they were always focused on education, always did the things that provided lots of love in the household. And at the same time, there was a lot of stress that was related to money. So much so that eventually I think that was one of the causes for them to eventually divorce. So my parents divorced and we moved back to Ohio, where I went to college. I went to high school, went to college, got 2 degrees, and I was someone who you can probably relate to a lot, Lisa. I was very much an A student. I got really good grades. I studied really hard. And because I studied really hard, I got good grades, and I kind of got into that loop that I thought that that's what always happened. And so much to the fact that when I graduated from college, I went there and I got really good grades in college. And so the next logical step was for me to get a job working for Procter & Gamble, for P&G. And just so happens that I got the good grades and I did all the things I was supposed to, but I got rejected from the job, like from the process. And I was just kind of like, I didn't know what to do.
Right.
So I went overseas, lived overseas, got a second degree, had the overseas experience, and I was absolutely sure that I was going to go back. I was going to go into the interview process and I was going to get that job, like the dream job, because that's the one that everybody says that you had to get.
Yeah.
Well, I entered into the process again and things were going well, and I got rejected again. So I got rejected twice, and I didn't really know how to handle that. That wasn't a really good thing. But at the same time, it was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because a really good friend of mine, probably one of my best friends to this day, told me about a job where people were traveling around the world. To make a short story kind of long, or a long story short, I ended up being one of 26 people that was hired out of about 6,000 resumes that came in.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that changed my life, Elisa, because that job allowed me in 5 years to work and travel throughout some 58 different countries.
Wow.
It completely changed the way that I saw the world, the way that I thought about the world, the way that I thought things were. And I ended up moving to Europe. I wanted to take a 1-year sabbatical because I didn't see myself doing a normal quote unquote 9 to 5 job
That's
after that.
58 country.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It was like, what was I going to do? Go sit in a cubicle? Like, I didn't see myself doing that. So I got accepted at university, and I was supposed to go on a 1-year sabbatical. And this was 2 weeks after 9/11 in 2001. And let's just say that since that point in time, Elisa, I lived in France. I left Paris, lived in a town called Montpellier, which is down in the south. I met a really cool, cute Spanish woman. Right before we met, or right after we met, they sent me to Italy to start up a sales team. I was working in the high-tech space. I was working in hardware. Eventually, I went back to France. And then instead of her going back to France, I ended up moving to Barcelona, Spain in 2005. And I've been in Barcelona since then. And up until recently, I was also working in a corporate career. You and I know you talked about this before when you were on my podcast at the Going Long podcast. And I was working for an enterprise software company. But after 26 years there, or after 26 years working in the corporate world, I'm no longer part of the corporate world and am focused on my own life and my own dreams and my own goals and spending more quality time, investing that with my family and also business. And the thing that I always tell people is, that 1-year sabbatical really changed my life. So you have to be careful when you want to do those like 1-year sabbaticals overseas or whatever, because mine turned into 3 additional countries, 4 additional languages that I've learned, a marriage, 2 kids, and this new life. So it's been absolutely fantastic. But that's a little bit about me and some of the things I've been doing, and also just to giving you a little bit more about professionally what I've been doing as well.
That's really fascinating. Then when did you get into investing? While you're traveling 58 country in these couple years, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of shifting. There's no
Mhm.
like settling down because you basically
Yeah.
have to jump on a plane every couple
Yeah.
weeks. So how do you find time to like start investing? And then what are the things that you firstly looked into?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So the very first thing that happened initially, because I'm an A student, remember I was talking about that, and I did what I was told. And so one of the things I was told was go out, get a good job, or get good grades. I did that. Get a good job. I did that, and invest in the stock market. And so I did that as well, right? And so I was doing that for about 5 years, and then the dot-com bubble happened in 2000, and I lost money. And so I don't come from money, so losing it like that, and it was completely out of my control, I didn't know what to do. So I kept investing because that's what I was told by the financial advisor, and because I'm a good student, I did exactly what I was told. And eventually, the portfolio came back to where it was. And then in 2008, it dropped again. But this time between 2008 2009, it dropped like 33%. And so I realized that I had to do something differently, and that's what kind of got me into the real estate space. But Elisa, and I'm sure you see this all the time, it got me into being a theoretical mastermind of real estate, because I knew all of the formulas, I had seen all the videos, I watched all the things, but I didn't take any action. And it
Of
wasn't
course,
until
you're a student. Yeah,
exactly,
study.
yeah. I was an A student, and I was like, everything's got to be perfect. And I would read things, and it was like, oh no, this is not. But then the thing that actually happened is, and my oldest son, he turned 3. So I was a young father. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was still this theoretical ninja, and I was all of these things that were supposed to happen. Like, I was a young father, a product of a divorced home, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was there for the most important events and things like that. Well, on my son's 3rd birthday, and it's one of these things that I used to be really ashamed of. I didn't like talking about it because there was this incongruency with what I said I wanted to do and what I was doing. And the night before his 3rd birthday, I didn't sleep well. It wasn't a good night, and I woke up early the next morning because I had to get on a plane to go to Frankfurt, Germany. And the thing that happened is, I woke up early that morning. I woke my wife and our 1-year-old up. You can imagine, like, not very necessarily happy about that, but also knew I wanted to give him a hug and kiss. And after they were up, I went and got my oldest son up, sang happy birthday to him, gave him a hug, gave him a kiss, and then I went to the airport. And the reason I tell that story was because when I went to the airport, I didn't feel well. I was in this business meeting all day long. I still to this day don't even remember what the meeting was.
Yeah.
I don't even remember who the people were that were at that meeting, Elisa. But that night, I do remember knowing that I wasn't with my wife and my kids or my in-laws. They were all singing happy birthday to my son, and I was at this business meeting dinner. And so it was that night that actually took me from the like theory master to becoming the person that had to take action. And so I eventually took action and bought my first. I went home, I wrote down you write down your goals and the things that you want to do. And I finally saw it. And it was no surprise that 8 months later, I actually made the very first property purchase while my wife and I were actually in Cairo, Egypt. It was a very different time. We had to fax documents and all that kind of stuff. It was just very different time. So we faxed documents. We're in Cairo, Egypt. The property was in New Jersey, and we live in Barcelona, Spain. So that's how I got started. And that was helping to solve a problem. At the time, I thought it was I loved the real estate piece, but what real estate was doing, it was helping me to solve a problem, which was having more control over the way that the income was coming into my home. Right. And so from there, then realized that we could put a process and systems in place to be able to live in Europe, where I absolutely love, and being able to invest in the US, which makes the most sense for me, my family, and in my context.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think motivation is really important, because before it wasn't painful enough, or certain things didn't happen, and then motivation pushes you to taking action. Yeah. So there's really no options there. Yep. So you started investing in real estate, and then I believe that you're investing in for lack of knowledge is in oil and gas business. You told me a little bit more about the oil and gas type of related investment. Probably want to correct me. It's not exactly oil and gas. And can you tell me, like, what is that transition? Why did you start at that?
Yeah. So I love that you asked the question this way, because it's really, it's why did you move that way? And the philosophy that you have is one that I appreciate, because it's not about the different, it's not just about having one vehicle, right? And I say it all the time, like, I believe you need to be very clear on the destination that you want for your life, for your family.
Yep.
Once you are clear on the destination, you can get there a lot of different ways. Like, you're on the West Coast and I'm here in Spain. Like, I could get to you a number, like, just because I think sometimes people don't really know, like, if I want to just get to the West Coast of the United States, I could do it a couple different ways. There are different vehicles that I can take. I can literally leave my office. I can get on a bicycle. I can ride my bicycle from here to the train station. I can take the train station tube and I can go to the airport. And from the airport, I can take a nonstop flight to the West Coast of the United States, right? Mm-hmm. That's one way. Those are different vehicles. I'm comfortable with those vehicles. There's also another way that I can do it. I could get on a skateboard. I could use the skateboard from here to my home. I could get in the car from my home, and I could get in the car all the way to the airport. But when I get to the airport, I decide I don't like long haul flights. So I'm just going to fly from Barcelona to Lisbon. And then when I get to Lisbon, I'm going to take a boat, and I'm going to go from Lisbon to New York City. And then when I get to the United States, I'm going to get on a train, and I'm going to go across the United States by train to get to the West Coast. I'm still getting to the West Coast. I'm just using the vehicles that are the most appropriate for me at the time, that I'm comfortable with, that get me moving towards the destination. I believe it's no different in investing. And so although I started with real estate, because real estate helped me with the control issue, I started having more control over the income. But then I was looking for more frequency of income. I was looking for more income. So I bought a mobile home park while I was here. I was investing in small multifamily, and then I bought a mobile home park. But then the thing that happened, Elisa, I wasn't, because I don't come from money, I wasn't surrounded by people that were talking about money when I grew up. And then when I was here, I didn't realize that I was something called an accredited investor. And an accredited investor has access to special, unique types of direct investments. And so I started realizing, wow, I can actually invest $200,000-$300,000 with someone else. They will do all the hard work, and I can keep doing my day job, which is what I enjoyed doing, because I liked my day job. And it started recognizing, okay, I wanted more frequency of income. So I invested with somebody else as a passive investor in ATM machines. And that was more frequency. And there were some tax benefits there as well. But then what started happening for me is I realized, wow, I really like this. So then there were a couple of other investment opportunities, and I invested in a couple of different hotels as a
Mhm.
limited partner, someone who invests passively on a very large 200 some odd unit apartment complex. But then as I was doing this over the years, one of the things that kept happening was I would see on my tax returns that there was something called passive losses. And it was literally like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I couldn't do anything with them. And so I
Mhm.
realized that there were different types of income. And I sat down and I paid my CPA to walk me through it and talk me through it and educate me. And I realized that these were like two different buckets. So then I was realizing I was still paying like 40+% in taxes. And so I wanted to figure out like what could I do to potentially see if I could keep some of that income so that I could then move it into other types of investments that were more tax efficient, is one of the buzzwords. So that's actually how I found the opportunity to be able to invest in the energy space, specifically in pieces of equipment that are carbon capture equipment through partnerships. I don't want to get into a lot of technical spaces,
Yeah.
but more importantly, it goes to the question of why did you do it, which I really appreciate that you asked why, because each one of these different vehicles, whether it was small multifamily, whether it was ATM machines, whether it was a mobile home park, whether it was the other development opportunities or the energy equipment, each one of these investments were different vehicles that are helping me and my family get to the destination that makes the most sense for us.
Yeah. And then that destination is, what is that destination?
It's to be able to have personal freedom, to be able to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, and where I want. Ultimately, that is what it's about at the end of the day. And you can talk about lots of different types of freedoms, but I think it just comes down to that personal freedom. I part of it, I had it when I was in the corporate space. I just wasn't in the mental space to realize like I was still going to a role that I liked because I was well respected, well recognized, well compensated, but I wasn't really passionate about selling
Mhm.
software. And it
Mhm.
took something for me to see, which was an illness and with my dad, to recognize like I don't need to keep going into this role. Like there are more important things in life, like time, how you invest your time, with whom you invest your time. And that was the thing that really made me realize that it was not the money component that was having me take action. It's more the emotional components. It's when you start to realize that time is finite. There's only so many things that that we can do, and it's about how do we invest our time to get the maximum amount of return, meaning fulfillment on our time. And for me, that boils down to personal freedom.
Yeah. I love kind of when you describe that journey, because at first you were kind of active because you own these properties. And then you're kind of going more and more passive because this is
Yeah.
where you realize, okay, like investment is just investment. And I want to note that you have invested various different asset, which each probably you have to study
Yep.
and study enough. But because someone else is operating, there's probably an underlining scene in terms of like, how can you, like, I guess my next question is, how can you actually invest in different types of asset? Wait, what helped you to reach that confidence to invest in these different types of assets? Yeah.
So I think a couple of things that, and you do a great job of helping your audience understand this. It is understanding what is the benefit that you are looking for in your life. And then once you
Mhm.
figure out what that benefit is, and for some people it's free time, for some people it's cash flow, for some people it's being able to travel around the world, whatever that is, be crystal clear on why you want it.
Mhm.
Because it is not going to be an easy destination. At moments in time, it's going to be challenging for you to get that benefit. So that's why and I know it sounds really cliche, Lisa, and I know you hear it and I know you tell people the same thing, but it is super important to understand why you want the benefit that you want.
Yeah.
And then once you're crystal clear on that, then initially it's you start to look for, okay, where are you look for the basic education, and more importantly you look for the people. Like that, like one of the reasons I was really really successful in the corporate world was because yes, I have some control in me, that I like control, but what really allowed me to accelerate and become a respected leader was I understood that it was about finding the right person with the right skill set that could
Mhm.
deliver for the overall team. And it's no different in investing. Yes, absolutely. I enjoy real estate. It solves a particular problem. It is extremely tax efficient as it relates to passive income. You also have to understand, you have to get educated, because I was investing for a really long time thinking that, well, everything I was investing in real estate was super tax efficient. It is tax
Mhm.
efficient. But when I
Yeah.
was someone who was earning a lot more money, wasn't necessarily the best vehicle. I think if I would have understood the way that they work together, I could have left the corporate world even sooner.
Yes.
because you start realizing, okay, how are you get a basic education, and then once you get the basic education that is linked to the benefit that you're looking for or the goal, then it's
Mhm.
about finding the people, finding the access to the network, the support, because that's what's going to allow you to move forward faster. So I don't worry so much anymore about what is the specific asset and becoming a master of that specific asset. It's, I know what I want. I know why I want it. Does this asset help to fix that issue? If it does, great. I'm going to learn enough about it so that I can go and speak to Elisa about it and say, hey, I understood it was this, 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 and this. And then based on the expert's response, okay, cool. Yes, this actually checks that mark. And then you work to find people that can help you get access to that specific asset. Because then once you can do that, then you're moving closer to your goal. So I think
Mhm.
more about getting an education, gaining access to the individuals or the teams of people that can help to fulfill on the goals that I'm looking for, more than the specific vehicle itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I'm thinking about as an active multifamily syndicator, operating a mobile home park, it's been a longest time. We went to university and all that stuff. I'm like, dude, there's just so much around this if you
Yeah,
become an active person.
yeah,
But in order to go breadth, you have to work with people that you trusted and
yeah,
let go of some of the controls that you have as well.
yeah.
Especially aligns with the goals like yours, living abroad and not having to worry about the operation side of things. Yeah, definitely works really well.
Yeah, and this
Yep.
is also too because nowadays, where we are focused on serving clients, it's really important that when we're working with operators, that our operators are world class. Our operators understand the asset, they understand the benefits of the asset, and they are also able to instill that confidence in our investors because they are the experts in that specific asset. And it's about us on the front end, very similar to as you are more than aware, is making sure that the asset that is supposed to produce the results, that the operator that is there, if you choose to have a separate operator, that the operator really understands what they're doing and the value that they should be deriving for the investors.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I was gonna ask, a way like rewind a way back, like, is there a moment? I feel like there's moments that you can tease out over there after you actively own the small multifamily building. Do you still own these assets right now? And then the mobile home park?
Yeah, so great, great question. So we have, so some of them, yes, but because of the way that the market's been recently, it's been phenomenal. So there are lots of people that have wanted to get into the space, which is smaller multifamily. The asset prices and the values of the assets are much higher than I'd anticipated when I purchased. And at the
Mhm.
same time, it's at a moment in time where I'm more focused on larger types of assets, which are truly businesses, rather
Mhm.
than multifamily or smaller multifamily and gaining experience there. I mean, I have lots of friends that also own small multifamilies, and that's their business model.
Yeah,
Just for me, I would rather have hundreds of units because
yeah,
that is more a business, and you
yeah.
can purchase the business, and the business is then it's about how do you manage the model of the business versus
Mhm.
managing the individual 4 and 5 unit properties. So we've sold some of them, we're in the
Mhm.
process of selling some of them now,
Mhm.
and ideally we're in a place where we just have mobile home parks or larger multifamily and more of the energy space, because that's really the focus that we have now, because it's very unique in being able to help solve a W-2 income tax issue.
Yeah, yeah, and then also probably aligns with your goal more. And then it's
Yeah,
a okay, in the investment journey you're learning.
yeah,
I think the other passes leads to why you're where you are today.
yeah.
Like owning some small stuff, help you understand the
Yeah.
economics a little bit better, I'm guessing.
It,
How did that like help
yeah.
you
So,
with the
yeah, so Lisa, and I think so. Another great question, right? What that did is it helped me gain, number one, experience, just to say, okay,
Mhm.
well, this is actually like I went from the theory to actual practical knowledge. So
Yeah.
it made me much more knowledgeable on the things that could happen, could go wrong, do go wrong. And the other thing that it helps, because when there are people like me that are high control, like I enjoy control, and because my track record has shown that having that control is produced positive results, sometimes you have to really experience things to understand how challenging they can be and or
Mhm.
the return on your time. So one of the things that I also talk to people about, like, listen, I think passive investing is fantastic. I mean, I
Mhm.
enjoy it. I really do like it. At the same time, sometimes people are like, well, I just want to be active. I want to do everything. I want to hold everything. And when you realize how much work actually goes into doing it effectively,
Mhm.
having those smaller multifamilies also helped me realize that, yeah, you know what? I do want to continue to be a passive investor, because that's also a great way to leverage the efforts of others who are experts in areas that I don't want to take the time to learn about. However, the end benefit that this particular vehicle can provide is something that I'm interested in. And if I can have a conversation with the person who's actually an expert, they can help me to understand it in a language that makes sense to me and speaks to the benefit that I want, then that also is something that I want to do. So really having those smaller multifamilies help me to do both things, practical knowledge, and then help me realize passive investing is really cool. And there's a lot more people that are out there that are experts in other things. And so I want to also be able to team with them.
That's awesome. And now you mentioned about passive investment, and then there's probably a certain method of ways that you're vetting the deals or vetting the people. So do you have maybe top three questions? Because we don't have time to go through
Right.
all of them. I'm sure the vetting is a lot deeper, but the top three things that you would suggest a new passive investor go do, or questions that they would want to ask on their syndicators. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. If it's okay with you, can I give it just a combination of the two? Because I really do think it's two things. And a lot of times, especially because I'm a long distance investor, as you know, we've talked about before. Number one, you need to be consistent with your actions. So depending on what your investment attitude and aptitude is, then it's like any other relationship. When you start, maybe it starts with a couple of emails, and you go from emails to maybe a phone call. Now you have you can do FaceTime audio, you can do WhatsApp, you can do all these things that no matter where you live, you can contact people. And then if it goes from there, maybe you jump on a Zoom session or Skype. And eventually you're going to want to have the conversations of, what are the mission, vision, and values of each of the individuals, and do they align? And then I think ultimately, and this is exactly what I've done, it's this exact same progression, starts on emails, starts on the social media site, and will eventually move to getting on an airplane or driving in your car, however long it is, to meet with the people that are going to be actively managing the assets. Because I
Mhm.
think that that's really important, because it just shows a congruency as well of how important this type of investing is. So one, I think that the relationships and the actions have to follow the importance of the investments that you're going to make, number one. And then number two, when you're actually speaking to an operator, some of the things that I like to hear, I want to know how much they know the specific asset and the location, because that's those are key elements to
Mhm.
understanding how well they're going to be able to deliver on the promise for me as a passive investor. I also want to understand how did they react when things didn't go wrong, and give me very specific examples, because that will also talk to them being experienced at handling challenges. If
Mhm.
someone's never had a problem, I personally am a little bit like, okay, well, nothing ever happens perfectly. So either you're just starting, which could
Yeah.
be okay or not, or you're not necessarily telling me all the story. And so, those are, if I had to give three things, it's a normal relationship. It's going to follow its curve. Also being able to have the person explain how they've managed the asset and they understand the location. And then the last point is really being able to understand how they've handled things that didn't work properly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think these are great, fantastic points. We definitely agree with these as well. Now, how do you what is your next kind of 5-year goal or midterm goal? Whatever midterm is, for some people it's 3 years, some people 5 years, some people 7 year. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, and I love that, because this is one of the things that happens especially when you're you've got your corporate plans, you've got the 5-year strategic plan. It's one of the things I did for such a long time. And now it's a very similar thing. You have the outlook that you're going to do over time. Where do you want to go? And then you're managing that on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
So the next, rather than say over the next 5 years, like the next big goal for our company is to be able to serve 200 accredited investors, specifically if you're a first time accredited investor. And the reason for that is because that's who I was. I was in
Mhm,
a world of accredited investors and I didn't even know the questions to ask. I
mhm,
knew what it was like to feel completely uncomfortable in this new world and not really have anybody to talk to. And so I have a big, strong passion for that because there are a lot of us that are out there that have worked really, really hard. We've come to a point where we have amassed what we think is wealth or being able to have more money in your bank account than you ever thought about it. But because you don't have the knowledge, the education, or the access, you just
mhm.
kind of sit there and freeze and don't do anything. And so the goal is to be able to serve 200 of those accredited investors is the next big goal for us. And then from
Yeah.
there, we'll deepen the relationships and go from there.
Yeah. So Billy, tell me a little bit more about that transition. You talked about, for yourself, it becomes more tax efficient when you invest in the vehicle that you're investing now. Sure, you're still doing some other passive investment right now in real estate, but the adding that arms of investment into your arsenals of investments, how exactly is that being more tax efficient for you?
Yeah, sure. And I love the way you tee that question up. And so once again, of course, because when you're talking about taxes, we're not giving anybody advice. We're talking about kind of specific examples and ideas, and it's best for people to understand more about your specific situation with your tax professional. But one of the things that happened to me, as mentioned before, as someone who was a high wage earner, what I started recognizing was I was getting tax efficient for efficiencies from passive income, so the real estate portion, but I was still paying a high W-2 tax bill. And so one of the things, and maybe just like using a very simple example. So when you're looking at an investment that has like large pieces of equipment that may have something like bonus depreciation on them. Well, because of the way that the bonus depreciation rules work, you can take 100% of your investment and you would have that loss. And so if we just use a simple example, if you are someone who is a W-2 earner, maybe you have let's say it's $100,000 because that just makes it easier to do. And if you're someone who is at a 40% tax bracket, well, if you're in a 40% tax bracket at $100,000 as an investment, it's a loss that would happen on a particular example. Then it would be that $100,000 times 40%, which is in this example, $40,000. Now, if the type of vehicle that you were investing in allowed you to also be able to take that loss against your W-2 income, that would be worth in this example would be worth $40,000. So if you use that and maybe look at it compared to sometimes a real estate investment, because I have lots of real estate investments, and if that same funds were there, that would actually be in a passive income bucket. So it really determines if it's an active income or passive income, where it's
Right.
going to make the biggest impact. And so the way that I like to look at it is, imagine if you were able to, in this specific example, that $40,000 that you were either able to gain access to, then if you have another passive investment that is maybe a $25,000 minimum, or you could use that same $40,000 to not only keep, but then you're also being able to place it in a passive income investment, which is going to generate a yield for you. And depending on where you are in your passive income, that may be something that is really interesting for you. But once again, I think it comes back to the concept of understanding, having the education, understanding how your income is being generated, and then making sure that you have the vehicle that's going to help you get to your ultimate short, mid, or long-term goal as quickly as possible. So
Yeah.
hopefully that example makes sense.
Yeah, I love that example. Just to kind of summarize it up for our view a little bit over here, it's basically using example, you invested 100K into the investment that you kind of talked about before that is tax efficient. It generates a active loss. Active loss can be used to offset your active income, which is your W-2 jobs, wages, and et cetera, or 1099. So from there, you generate a negative $40,000 a loss, but it is used to offset your active income. So you no longer have to pay Uncle Sam the $40,000. Therefore, at the end of the year, you get $40,000 more. Then you use that money to invest in potentially passive investments, because you don't need more active negative K1s, because you already offset all your income. There's no more than the
Yeah.
negative zero, right?
Right.
So then you use that to then you have $40,000 more to invest into real estate, passive investments, and this and that. I love that example. And then,
Yeah.
love it. Yes.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
mean that is one of the things, and it's like as you said before, obviously it's an example, and so you want to be able to talk to your tax professionals, help you to understand how do you use each one of these vehicles to your benefit, because ultimately what you want to do and what you're helping everyone do, Elisa, is to get to understand the vehicles so that they can get to their destination as soon as possible.
And then what do you do for your kids in terms of teaching them financial literacy?
I don't know if you can see that over my shoulder here, but there's a couple things. One, we talk about money, right? My children at 10 and 12 understand the concept of passive income that I didn't understand until my 40s.
Mhm.
So just the fact that we talk about money, it is not a taboo subject. There are certain things that we may not explain to them because we just don't feel like it's relevant, or they maybe want to talk and share all their stuff with their friends and stuff. But the things that are important, we talk about them openly. And I didn't do that where I grew up. That's one thing. Second thing is we actively engage, like over my shoulder, I mentioned that there are cash flow 101 for kids or cash flow for kids. We play that. It's something that I think is important because the kids through gamification are understanding the concepts, even if, in the game, you can buy stock and this kind of stuff, but it's just to get them exposed and let them know that it's okay to ask about money, to engage in conversations about money. And also that mommy and daddy don't have all the answers. Many times daddy's on the
Mhm.
phone or mommy's on the phone talking to somebody else, so that it becomes normal for them to not think that, well, I'll just ask somebody and they have all the answers, that they understand and recognize that it's about working together collectively in a team to be able to solve
Mhm.
most of the major challenges for
Yeah,
others.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, lastly, Billy, how does people find about more about you if they kind of want to join the group of a credit investor tribe? How do they find out more about you?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. So one of the things I would say is if there's someone who's an accredited investor and you're suffering through this being crushed and you're consistently paying the high taxes on your W-2 income, we have a free guide, so it's easy for people just to pick up on their own. They can go to firstgencp.com/pay less tax. They can find out more about that. Once again, firstgencp.com/pay less tax. You can find the website is firstgencp.com. And then I like, and you know this, Elisa, because we connected there. I like connecting with people through LinkedIn. If you want to send an email, I think I'm the only Billy Keels in Barcelona, Spain, through LinkedIn. And it would be great just that they know that you and I have already had this conversation. Just leave a little personalized note. And then also, if anybody wants to know about long distance investing, I mean, you have an awesome episode that's out already, so you can check it out. The Going Long podcast with Billy Keels would be just to have a very passive experience in listening as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Billy, for today's session.
Thanks,
And
Elisa. Appreciate it.
this wraps up another 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence.